I hope you're all having a great Wednesday so far. I'll just let everyone connect to the video and audio. You can turn your cameras on or off, whatever you're most comfortable with. As you join the call, you'll just notice that you're automatically muted. That's just because we have quite a few people on these calls, just to prevent any distractions. We will have time for questions at the end, and you can also utilize the chat if you have any questions throughout the meeting. This call is also being recorded, so if you're joining late or if you would like to see a copy of the recording later, please ask your schools, or you can reach out to us as well with any questions, and we'll be happy to share the recording with you. I'll just wait a little bit to make sure everyone's on the call. I know some parents will trickle in later, so all right, well, welcome to the Montessori Thrive Parenting Series. Hopefully you've been with us all month. We've been here every Wednesday night throughout October, and this is our final parenting session of the month. We host these parenting sessions twice a year to help Montessori schools with their parenting education, because we know that when parents partner with a Montessori school, it's just so great and valuable to have that parenting support. We know that you made a great decision by choosing Montessori for your child, and it's great that you're also making the effort to be here tonight. It shows a lot about who you are as a person and as a parent. This evening, I'm excited to welcome our speaker who's joining us all the way from the UK. So she's up quite late, much later than all of you who are joining us from the United States. Sarah Cummins is here, and she's going to be showing a presentation on the importance of routine and order during the first plane of development. She's a parent coach and has helped several families discover their child's love of learning. She's also AMI trained. I'm really pleased to have her here tonight. I'll go ahead and let her take it from here. All right, Sarah.
Hi, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Yes, it's quite early in the morning, my time here in the UK, but that's quite common for me when I am working with families in the US. So I am all ready to go and looking forward to working with you. I've been following the series this month, and you've had some fantastic speakers and an opportunity to really dive deeper and explore Montessori and how it can work for you in your home. As well. So that's really a fantastic opportunity for you. So I'm just going to share my screen if this works. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so today we're going to focus on just really order and routine in that first plane of development, but to really understand that, we're going to quickly kind of just go through the a little bit of the background around the planes of development and what Montessori had termed the planes of development. There are actually 4 planes of development in Montessori, and 0 to 6 being that starting point, but it does go on. It does go up until age 24, 25 years of age. Now that 0 to 6 is broken into 2 subplanes, the 0 to 3 and the 3 to 6. But you'll know from your young children that at 0 to 6 age is really the age where they're saying, like, let me do this. I can do this myself. They're really grasping hold of everything that they've absorbed in their environment, developing that into their own internal drive, and really wanting to grow their independence. And where they're in the what Montessori termed as the absorbent mind at this stage as well. So they're just taking in that whole environment around them, that you're giving them the opportunity to explore and the freedom to express themselves in. Now, as I said, that is the kind of termed as that absorbent mind. I always like to view this as this sponge that's just soaking up everything around them, regardless of what it is. Their environment around them is their learning environment, whether it is home, whether it is in school. And during this stage, your child, it really needs to be encouraged to explore, but in their own time. And giving them that time is really a precious amount of time that allows them to just be embedded in what their environment has to offer. And the child really learns from everything and everybody within their environment. So they just learn by being there. They're taking that in. So they're absorbing all aspects, whether it be language, whether it be culture, whether it is that routine and structure that we're going to talk about a little later on. Just by being in that environment, the children are learning from it as well. This is a natural process for the children. This is not, there's no effort involved for them to learn from this. This happens naturally. Children are born with this inner drive and desire to learn. And this first stage, this foundational stage, which is the foundation for all other aspects of their future life, is that time that they're taking everything in. So they're unconsciously absorbing and hearing through their senses throughout this process as well. And this is through watching you as well at home and as parents. So no pressure, right? So when you think about it, yeah, it's a big deal. And since children at this age can't yet distinguish what's right or what's wrong, they're looking to you and the people in their environment to help them and to show them what's right and wrong. So they take on what you're doing and what you're saying and how you're modeling being a person within that environment. And that will become their routine and that will become their structure naturally through your modeling or the modeling of the teachers, that the environment that they're in as well, if they're in a setting as well. And when Montessori talks about this, the two sub planes within this, the 0 to 3 and the 3 to 6. So the 0 to 3 stage, they're unconscious learners completely. They're taking everything in just naturally. And as they move into that 3 to 6 stage, they're becoming conscious, they're becoming aware of their decisions, aware of their movements, and aware of the choices that they're making, even though sometimes it doesn't always feel like that, does it? Now, let me move this screen down this way so I can actually see this. So as said, during those first 3 years, all the learning is done outside of the child's conscious mind. Okay, they're learning just by exploring their senses and interacting. And this is really the absorbent mind just in full force of all it is capable of. And then during that second part, that 3 to 6, they do become conscious, but they're learning by doing. So they're taking on board everything that they've taken in that early absorbent mind, and they're now putting this into practice. And there are kind of real focus areas in the child's development during the 0 to 6 stage. And whilst we're going to focus on that order and routine today, there are other areas of aspects of development that's going on that does actually overlap into order quite a lot. So when you're talking about focus, concentration and focus and coordination and independence, that all is taken on board with the aspect of order. And it's all kind of starts with what the child feels as order and routine within their environments that they feel safe and secure. Not letting me move it. There we go. Montessori said that there is in the child a special kind of sensitivity which leads him to absorb everything about him. And it is the work of observing and absorbing that alone enables him to adapt himself to life. He does it in virtue and an unconscious power that exists in childhood. The first period of the child's life is one of adaptation. Through the child's ability to observe naturally and just take in his environment, they're growing and they have this aspect of sensitivity that allows them just to be that critical observer to the environments that are around them, and they take that on board. So within this first plane, as I mentioned, that there's lots going on, but to really understand how this plane really works, There are so many characteristics that we as the adults need to be aware of and need to look out for, and really be able to recognize within our children. It is a period of physical and spiritual construction. It is, if you consider that young child that has gone from not being able to independently move themselves, not being able to communicate other than through noises. And during this first plane, they're able to walk and talk and they move through this. The development is so huge that there is no other plane that has this level of development in it. It is the greatest plane of development that there is for magnitude as well. The child needs to feel loved and protected. It's the security that's within that environment that allows them to really be embedded within the environment, but also to grow and to develop as well. We have to be aware that at this period of time, the child is not choosing for themselves. It's an unconscious development. They're absorbing that world around them and that environment as well. And it is a period of adaptation to surrounding the environment. Their environment is new to them and they are adapting, but through absorbing what's going on around them. So they're again looking to us as the adults to be able to help them adapt and fit in to what their environment is as well. They start to develop the ability to formally communicate. They develop their coordinated movements, spontaneous physical movement continues. The use of the sensory organs are really important during this plane. Children are learning through their senses and continue to learn through their senses. So that hands-on opportunity, that visual opportunity, the auditory sense, all of their senses are really needing to be worked and refined. And we really need to recognize the importance of allowing the child to use explicitly one sense at a time during different periods during this plane as well. They can work alone or in parallel, but there is a intrinsic need for purposeful work during this plane as well, that the child is driven for that purpose for work. What is the purpose behind it and what are they going to gain from it? So during the first 6 years of life, they really move through the five main categories of sensitive periods. And we're going to talk a little bit about sensitive periods in a bit, but that includes order, language, sensory skills, movement, and social skills. And we're focusing on that order one tonight. And each of these sensitive periods lasts for as long as necessary for each child. So no two children are the same, as we are so well aware of, but that includes in the children's sensitive period. The period is there when the child is, and the child will let us know when it's there, but it's through our observational skills and awareness of their developmental stages that enables us to recognize when that period is happening, to best be able to meet their needs as well. But the child needs to have that time to be able to really complete their period, sensitive period, and during their stage of development as well. And they're only temporary and they do fade once the aim is accomplished. And really those moments in time are times for us as adults to really further meet their needs, but it's the prime time for that stage of development for the child as well. So Montessori had actually observed that the child's sense of period for order was most prevalent between the ages of 1 and 4 and 5 years of age. Now, although the sense of order definitely begins at birth, it peaks later. So we recognize it's important that we're aware of this sense of order and the sensitive period for order from birth, but we will start to see the shift and that peak later on in the child's development. And they crave consistency and they crave routine and structure within their daily environments as well. And many times when a young child, you'll recognize they might throw a tantrum, or they're unhappy, or seem just off balance sometimes. It is due to a subtle change in their daily life. The smallest alteration can affect a toddler when they're moving through this period. And one of the greatest examples that I tend to use when discussing this is your child always uses the blue cup, but the blue cup's in the wash at the moment, and it's just, they're not ready for it. And in our adult brain, we're kind of going, can't they just use the green cup? It's a cup, what's the difference? But they're not doing it to be difficult. They're not getting upset because they really want that blue cup just to be difficult. They're doing it because that structure of having that blue cup all the time means that that's their routine, and they weren't prepared for that change. And sometimes just talking them through it or giving them the heads up in advance um, can actually eliminate the tantrum. But it's important that we recognize, okay, sometimes this is out of their children's control, and that sense of order is what's causing them to be upset, not just the, I definitely want the blue cup as well. And one of the ways you can help your child develop that sense of order is actually establishing this daily routine, but one that works for your family. Routine is unique to each family. There's no um, guide to that suits every family at all. It depends on your circumstances with regards to work. It depends on, you know, siblings in the house, how many children, whether or not you have pets. It's so many aspects comes into what you do when you decide what routine is for your family. But it's within that family, establishing that routine will really help your child with their sense of order. So it's about recognizing and sitting down as a family and looking at your routine, and does it really work for you? And there exists in the child a passionate love for established routines. And this is when a child may seem disturbed by disorder, is because that right now they're craving that order and that routine and structure in their life. So when disorder happens, they just are off balance. And that we need to, just by recognizing it, helps us actually support the child in a more empathetic way, and in a more practical way for their sensitive need at that moment in time as well. Now, why is order so important for young children? Well, this sensitive period for order really helps the child to develop a range of skills, awareness as well. And I think sometimes it helps to understand why we're giving this time, or why we need to start to recognize sensitive periods. And it really can help your child develop their reasoning skills, which is actually linked to math. And I always kind of say to parents, don't stress, you're not, creating mathematical geniuses at this point, but it's actually just meeting their mathematical mind, which is there as well during this stage. But to organize information, to understand their environment. Sensitivity to order can be characterized by the desire for that consistency and repetition, where children crave routine and structure. And during this period of sensitivity, children may be more interested in putting things in order and packing things away than they are in playing with their toys. I remember my youngest is now nearly a teenager, and when he was in his sensitive period of order, I used to just be fascinated by how he used to line up his toy cars in order. And I would come along and try and play with him and move them around, and he would get really upset with me. His order at that point was lining up the cars which made sense to him. It made no sense to me at all, but that was his work during that period, and we had to give him that time to do that. And he would repeat this over and over again. And if I changed the order of the cars, or if I changed how the cars were being set up, how he was doing it, he would become upset. I was actually imposing on his sensitive period during that time. And it was quite fascinating to watch him move through this period with this. But to support the sensitive period for order, we have to establish some. I'm not a fan of using the word rules, but they're kind of those routines and solid routines within our environments and create that organized environment where everything has a place. Now, when we say where everything has a place, that's not saying that your environment needs to be neat, orderly, and clean 100% of the time. That's an unrealistic expectation. But what it is that everything has a home within this environment, and we're all aware of where the things belong in that. And sometimes, depending on families and the environment for each family, sometimes that might mean there is more order in one space for the child, and that might mean their bedroom, and that their bedroom is set up where everything has a place. And because the rest of the home can't be established like that at this period of time, and that's okay. And it's just about creating that space for the child. It helps create predictability, and actually, predictability makes children feel safe. And it really does help us as adults too when we're aware of what's going to happen, and we're establishing that security very early on for the children, which is a really important aspect for child development. It helps to eliminate confusion and give clarity to the thought in their mind and the process. So not only just predictions, but also expectations and of what is expected of them, or what they can be expecting next as well. They to learn predictability that leads to building that trust and that sense of security, and they get to absorb and see and learn relationship building within that environment through order. And they're seeing and learning how things relate to the child, to themselves, to the child, and their environment. They're linking that relationship aspect, so not just the relationship with you as the adults, but that relationship with the environment and where they fit in their environment as well. And it is to develop that logical, mathematical, and calculating mind. So from a very early on, and if we think about the aspects of sequencing, which is order and routine, that links completely to that mathematical mind for later on as well. Montessori says that the child has a different relationship to his environment from ours. The child absorbs it. Thing he sees are not just being remembered, they form part of his soul. He incarnates in himself all in the world about him that his eyes see and his ears hear. And I think it's really important that we recognize the power of the environment for the young child, and how we are still able to look at what we're doing within the environment to help structure that security and sense of belonging for young children. So there's the aspects of the order comes from external order, which helps the child to understand everything has a place, which is the order within the environment. Everything has a meaning. That's the order in the adult's actions, and everything has its time, order in time. So if we look for a moment in the order in the environment, um, we are the adults that create that orderly environment, that we are the ones that shows where everything has a place and one place. um, every item has one function, every item has its name and only one name, and that creates order within that. And the as mentioned, that the child starts to begin to form how things belong and where things belong within the environment, not just the child and the environment, but also the things within the environment. So let's think about that in a second for when you're setting up your space and creating an environment. Now, attractive and pleasant to the eye is when we're thinking about and if we just look at the moment for actually setting up your space for your child's toys and activities, and attractive and pleasant to the eye means that it's not overly cluttered, that everything has a space within that environment. Everything is visible at eye level for the child, that it can be reached, that it is attractive, as natural as possible, not too overwhelming with to overload their senses with overloading of colors or too many things. Uncluttered means really what it says. It's just recreating that space so that everything seems orderly within that. And toy rotation, removing some things from the shelves that are not necessarily being used at that time, is one way really to unclutter it. Or having a good look around and seeing what just is not fitting your child's stage of development at this point and can be put away until later, or can be passed on to another child as well, is a really great way of looking at how to unclutter that space. Not overly stimulating, as in not too many things going on at one time. So often when we look at activities and toys that are for children, it has music playing, it has noise going on in the background, it's got 10 different gadgets on it. And it's really about looking at how you can refine that and bring that back down to really be working on a holistically development of the child's senses and not that overloading of the senses. So children's brains, because they are sensorial learners in this first plane of 0 to 6, they really want their senses to be heightened and enhanced, but that when it becomes too much for them, they actually can't concentrate and focus. They really struggle to bring themselves back to a sense of order as well. So that's where you'll start to see some challenges in behavior as well. Um, Looking at what's interesting for them and what they find purposeful as well. So when we talk about interesting, we're also talking about purposeful for the child, that the child can be engaged in activities and what's around them that meets their need during that time as well. And when you're looking at engagement, it's through looking at how much they can focus and concentrate, that opportunity for repetition as well within the activities, which is really important for development and understanding. And repetition also gives that sense of security as well for the child, so that they have that opportunity to completely repeat and to build towards mastery within the activities as well. And the space needs to allow that freedom. And this is when we talk about freedom, it's not that let them be free to do whatever they want and explore the environment with no restrictions. To allow freedom really is to understand your child's needs at this time, and to offer them the freedom to explore, the freedom to move without restrictions, but also boundaries need to be set in place within environments to keep your child safe as well. So it's not freedom without safety. So when you consider your space for your child, you're looking at how can this space promote development, and not just the physical development, but your emotional development, your social development, your spiritual, your cultural development, all aspects of the whole child. How does this space within my environment promote that? And you're looking at all aspects of their space to be able to help create that as well. And this is again unique for each family, because each family's home is so different that you go back to the developing needs of a child to create the space, not one size fits all within each environment, because it doesn't. So this all helps with the routine and the order in the time and routine. And the routine, the schedules, the structured life cycle that the adults build, so we've built these within our lives, helps the child to build their logical mind, that predictability that I spoke about, and allows them to really feel safe and secure, because the child knows what to expect and prepare that sense of orientation as well. And daily routines provide a consistent pattern of activities for learning time, for meals, for rest, for outdoor play, etc., etc. But there are pattern activities that the child becomes so familiar with that it really does support them to feel that safe and secure. But it also has an influence on their emotional regulation as well, and their cognitive and social development. And they thrive with routine and throughout childhood. But children in the sensitive period of order, they don't just benefit from order, they're actually demanding it at this point, and we need to listen to this and create this for the child. Now, routines will help predict what will happen next. Now, why is this important? Well, if the child is absorbing their environment, those patterns and sequence that they're taking in is happening naturally for the child. They're taking that in naturally. And when they have this routine, it will support their ability to predict and develop their expectations, but of themselves, of what they're going to do next, but also their expectations of you as the adult. And in return, this leads to independence as well. So, and this is what we're striving for in young children all the time, is that sense of independence, that development of independence. Routine also helps to not forget things, and it helps us just to remember what sequence is going next. That, okay, if the bath is running, for example, it's coming up to brushing teeth and bedtime. It's that routine is there. So they're not focusing, which I'll talk a little bit in a moment, is they're not focusing on the time it's happening. They're focusing on the sequence, and they start to understand and know what's coming next as well. And it will become part of their internal routine as well. So that it helps alleviate some of the challenges that we might see in behavior when children are unsettled by a disturbed routine as well. But when I said about laying the foundations for logic and math, that sequence is important for both logic and math. By having clean routines with a clear and logical sequence, you're laying that foundation for natural development into math, but also that positive experience with math, order, and precision. So some examples, so that it doesn't sound completely crazy, really, is bedtime. So this is what you do every day to get ready for bed. And so, like I said, in bedtime might consist of bath, brush teeth, story, good night. And so if that routine is followed every night, that when the child knows that it's bath time, or they hear that bath running, they know what's coming next. So rather than saying bedtime is at 7 p.m. or bedtime's at 8 p.m., time is not what the child is focusing on. Actually, the child knows that bedtime is when that sequence finishes. So, and that can be 7:45, that could be 8:15. It can change depending on the story, depending on how long the bath was, but they're looking for that sequence, and not focusing on that time as well. When you're going out, so all the things that you do before going out, and this takes planning from the adult as well, as much as possible. But for example, if you're going out, it's pack your bag before you go out, put your shoes on, your coat on, and that routine means going out. Or for example, if you're in that stage of toilet development or being independent in the toilet, that they go to the bathroom first, they go to the toilet first, and then they get their shoes and coat on. So the child knows each routine before going out. So again, it's not about we're going out at 10 o'clock. It's okay, we're getting ready to go out. It's what's first? It's the toilet, if perhaps, or it's the packing that bag that we are our going out bag, and then our shoes, and then our coat, etc. It's that sequence, so that they know when that's done, then we're going out. The bathroom, which is really a whole learning development stage in itself, really, sometimes, but helps the child use that bathroom in an appropriate and hygienic way, which is really important. So again, it's looking at where things are set up within your bathroom, looking at, to begin with, as you're going through the toilet learning stage, is the times that they're going. So is it just before a meal, or is it just after a meal? And again, it's not looking at the watch time, but it's looking at that routine time and that sequence of what happens when they're going, the cleaning up afterwards, the washing of hands, and that hygienic method that you're using. Then the children become very aware of that, and that just becomes part of what they do when they go into the bathroom. Then the dinner time, now again, this is another one that is dependent on each family, but it can offer family routine for everybody to participate, if possible, which is wonderful. So it's the setting up, the cleaning up, and which is a really great opportunity for young children to start to be involved in the family as well, and start that aspect of chores, I suppose. But it is actually just family involvement, it's an engagement. And dinner is a wonderful opportunity for conversation, and to start to develop that relationship within the family as well. But it's not that that dinner time routine needs to be done 7 nights a week or 7 evenings a week, because it is dependent on the family. So your routine can be different for different days, depending on work, depending on commitments as well. But the children will become aware of that, as long as there is consistency. And so if you struggle with maintaining a consistent bedtime, it's setting the goal to start the process at the same time every night, and then be consistent with that routine. So as I mentioned, taking the bath, brushing the teeth, getting dressed for bed, reading a book, and saying goodnight, and they know what's next. Or If you're working on that toilet learning, establish regular times to have your child use the toilet. For example, when your child wakes up, first thing they do, before and after a meal, before you leave the house, and when you return to the house, etc. So that routine becomes part of what the children do naturally as well. Now, it's our job as adults to implement these routines and to really become consistent with them. But so we have to recognize what we need to be doing as well as adults, because we're not in the same sensitive period as or for order, and we are not in that need for that, repetition and repetition within this. We know what our routines are for the most part, I think sometimes, but we have to allow extra time for the child. So give the time that your child needs to show them first. They need to be shown, whatever that routine is, whether it is the bedtime routine or the going out routine. Show them what that routine is and allow them to have the time to become successful within that. So if you know you're leaving the house in half an hour or in 45 minutes, but it might take your child a little longer, give them that time to begin with. If you know that you're starting a new routine at going to bed, and you want this routine to consist of bath, teeth, dress, story, bed, but you recognize the child is just becoming used to this at the moment, give that extra time to begin with. So don't focus on that end clock time, focus on the routine. The sequence that the child needs to become familiar with is, like I said, they're not looking at this time, they follow this sequence. So you as the adult need to set up the sequence well and be consistent with it as well. Just if it's not working after 3 times, don't change it yet. Give it time to work, give it time to be embedded in the child as well. Explain, it's that conversation that we need to offer the child, and which will help them understand and navigate new routines. So talk to your child, even very young children. If you verbalize what you're doing and why you're doing it, they will start to appreciate and understand what's happening. And they might not fully understand or comprehend it at the moment, but just by explaining to them offers them that respect of the situation and their sensitive period at this time as well. And consistency is such key, as we know, to young children, and it will really help them to develop their sense of order and routine and that sequence that's needed as well. What we have to remember, and which is so vitally important, is the goal of all of these routines should be the stepping stone towards independence, where creating these routines to meet their need of a sensitive period at this time, but we're striving for them to be independent, and we're working towards that as well. So the routines have to work for you in your family and your family within your home, and that's unique to each family as well, what routines and what works for you. And when we look at routines and structure, and bedtime is always one that becomes very interesting in a conversation in a room of parents, because where one parent believes that a 7 p.m. is the bedtime and that's the prime time to be getting charged, but another parent's routine is a 10 p.m. And it all depends on what works for that family, what the child needs, and that routine is what they're establishing for their child. And that's what's important, because you're creating that environment for the child to be independent in. And so the order of the adult, it helps us, I think, when we understand the child's sensitive period and we understand what their needs are, but we understand that too much of that stimulation and too much of that chaotic environment will create such confusion in the child's mind and become very overwhelming. And that's where we have the emotional outbursts or the behavior struggles or the battles that we have, is there's too much going on, and that your child can't create that peace within their mind. And limited quality of the stimuli is best for your child. I'm always saying less is more, less is more. And it's giving them that space and time to be able to really be embedded in what the environment can offer them as well. Providing those purposeful activities. And that's really a great opportunity for you as the adults to observe consider the stage of development of the child and your child's ability. And observation is key here to understand what your child needs. And so take that step back and do some observations of what they're using, and how they're handling themselves within the environment. And creating space that are helpful for keeping order in your child. And as I mentioned, sometimes that's just the bedroom for now, and sometimes that can be moved into other rooms. But by it helps them keep that order within that. So look at what's possible within your home, and look at where your child moves within there, and see how you can help create that order for your child within the spaces within your home, and adjusting the areas within your home to become more suitable and reachable for your child's safety and independence. And this happens at different times, because your children grow and they develop and they need different things at different times. So that adjustment is continuous. It's not just adjust once and we're all good until they're 18. I'm afraid not. It needs to be adjusted throughout their lives during their different stages of development as well. Um, Modeling, putting things back in their exact places, that's something I still work on sometimes, actually. And when we take something and we put it back, we're modeling that for the child, and then the child becomes part of their routine as well. As an adult, be simple, clear, and consistent with your communication and your styles and request as well, and be united between both parents within the house, or all the adults in the house, that you're both on the same page with that routine and structure as well, which is really helps the child establish security. How you can move on to further develop your child is understanding that they're in a sensitive period and what they need in the environment and why they're behaving in a certain way. I think that actually helps us as adults really to bring a sense of calmness to our a reaction or response to the child at times as well when we're feeling frustrated. And because let's think about what those terrible twos, what they say, what is classed as a stage, it might not be so terrible when we understand and can accommodate that it's a phase of development where order and predictability is of the highest importance. Because you remember I said Montessori recognized that it's around that age that they start to peak that need for order. So chaos in their lives really creates chaos in their mind as well. And that external order that we're offering them really creates that inner order for the child. But it's important to note at this stage that the age range is just an approximate. Montessori herself said that a child's sensitiveness to order may be noticed even in the first months of existence. So we recognize that each child is so different. They're just approx, that you just need to, again, through observation and knowing your child, recognize the signs of that sensitive period. And children do let you know, they really do. So at this point is a good time for me to stop and see if there are any questions.
There's some good questions in the comments. I'll go ahead and read them out. We have one from Carolyn who asks, what recommendations do you have for maintaining order for a long vacation stay or staying at a relative's house or an unpredictable period such as Thanksgiving or the holidays?
So again, it depends on the age of the child, but in this first plane, it starts with those conversations that you're having, giving the child the heads up, first of all, that there's going to be a change into their routine and a change in their order, and looking at the needs of the child. So if you're going away on holiday, looking at what their needs are with regards to what items to bring as well, what would help them to bring security and comfort to them. Is can you establish that their wake up time is going to be the same still, although their daily routine shifts? Can you establish routines within that day that brings that order? So if you are used to, for example, going for a walk every morning, can that continue even though the walk is somewhere else? If you are used to having dinner as a family, can that continue as well? But I think when you're looking at like holiday vacation time or spending some time with family or even having people over to your house for things like Thanksgiving and Christmas, I think the conversations with the other adults is really important, and that everybody is establishing a level of respect for the child, and that this chaos that's coming into their lives is a beautiful opportunity for family and relationship building, but it is going to create chaos. And I think just knowing that will help you manage any of the behavior challenges as well. And when those moments pop up, and I'm not a fan of calling them tantrums, but when those moments pop up where there is behavior outbursts, it's you being their calm. You create the calmness for them. So remove them from a situation if necessary. I always carry a book with me when I used to go away with my children, with the young children, because I would find somewhere quiet to sit and to read, and that was the way I created calmness for my child. And so figure out what works for your child and create that calmness.
Great. She's asking also if she could see that first slide again with the 4 stages of development.
Sure. There we go.
Thank you. I hope that's helpful, Carolyn. I'll go ahead and read out the other question that we have here from Cindiso. Do you ever find that some kids seem to resist routine? In regular parenting literature, they are described as boundary pushing or testing. Do you have any suggestions for how to manage that while avoiding power struggles with a strong-willed child who seems like they are adamant about not wanting to do things the way that you ask them to do? Sorry. That is things that are a regular part of the routine. It's what you always do. And there's absolutely no surprise involved in the request because this is a regular part of the family's routine.
Yeah, so I've found that when that happens, when a child is fighting against that routine, and a routine that is established and that they are secure in and that they're aware, there's something else going on within them at the moment. It might mean that they are shifting into a different sensitive period. There might mean that there's a different developmental need are happening as well at that time. So it's about, everything comes back to observation. It's observing the situation and when that happens, and if there's a trigger point. Again, communication is key, and dependent, that usually starts to happen as the child gets a little bit older as well. It could be that there's been a change in their sleep. There's been a change in their eating habits. So something else is going on for the child to have that shift as well. And when it doesn't make sense to us is the time to step back as an adult. So when we see that those that routine is not working for the child, perhaps we need to look at what that routine is, and if that routine is meeting that need, and if we need to change the routine perhaps, and rather than trying to demand that the same routine continues, because children grow, and when what something was working 3 months ago might not be their need anymore. So it's about looking at the child in that way. I think, again, it's really important during those stages um, to find the calmness in it, because it's frustrating. And I'm a mom of 4 children. I've been through every battle that you can imagine with young children, but they. Trying to remind myself to stay calm, which has not always been easy. It's that moment of taking that deep breath, sometimes stepping away from the situation and then coming back when I'm a bit calmer, or recognizing actually my lack of calmness is creating a bigger problem, and bringing myself back to what the child needs at that time as well. And then there are times in a child's life that especially if you're trying to get out the door. And I think one of the biggest challenges has always been getting out the door and the child is refusing. They've always gone to the toilet, put their shoes on, put their coat on. We've got to the point of them getting their shoes on and they're refusing the coat. They're absolutely refusing and they're not having it. It's not going on, and we need to get out the door. And sometimes it's just this is what we're doing right now. So the choice would be you either put your coat on or I'm putting your coat on, but we're leaving one way or another. And it's understanding that time as well, but remaining calm.
Are there any other questions? And this says, thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Here's one from Naomi. My child goes to Montessori school Monday through Friday and has a weekly routine. Is it recommended to maintain the same routine on the weekends, or do we try to do a different, differentiate weekdays from weekends? Sorry.
Yeah, it's what works for your family. So the routine that they have in school is different to your home routine, and Monday to Friday routine tends to be different to the weekend routine for for the majority of homes where parents are not working, for example, on a weekend. So having different routines for different times is absolutely fine. And it's about then the child gets to understand, okay, this is my school routine. This is what happens when I go to school. These are those days, and these are the routines for the weekends. And that's the children really will adapt to that. Yeah.
Naomi says, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? We've got a few more minutes left on the call, so I just want to make sure if anyone has any questions. Here's one from Ronan's. How about sleeping situations transferring from bassinet to own bed?
That's a great one. And there's a couple of things come in here. We have to recognize any transition phase is a change in a change in routine for a child, and we need to give time and respect to transition. And transition is a moment where if it's not established routine can cause havoc in a child's mind as well. So when you're doing it, it's again looking at what the starting point, when would you like to start to transition the child to their own bed, and that routine becomes so sometimes that might look like you're starting the evening off in their new bed after for story time, for example, and letting the child fall asleep, but recognizing they may end up moving back to that bassinet throughout the night when they wake up. And that it's that consistency and that process. It doesn't happen in one night. It really doesn't. And it's just about being consistent within that home and giving the time to it, but establishing what level of it is important to you right now for in your home. Is it that they need to get in there and spend all night in there? If so, then your routine has become different. If it is that you can take some time to do this, and like I said, start perhaps with just the story time, or if they're still having daytime naps, do the naps in the bed, but the bassinet is still for nighttime to begin with. So work out what your goal is.
Just going off that question as well, I think she said transferring from bassinet to own bed and still breastfeeding throughout the night. Do I need to sleep with them?
That's a personal choice, I think, and what you're comfortable with. And I've had different experiences with doing that. With that was really a challenge for my children when they were not in floor beds. I had two children in floor beds, two children in not in floor beds. The first ones were not, and I grew confidence with the second, the third and fourth child. And I quite enjoyed my time when I would be nursing the children, whether it be just before they go to bed or in the bed, and I would go lie with them. I would tend to get up and move afterwards if I didn't fall asleep myself, as I was tired. But I think it's what you're comfortable with, and ensuring that whatever the decision is, that it's a safe and secure one for you and your child.
Great. We have another good question here from Greg and Jen. My son is 22 months old and is resisting brushing teeth and washing hands and face. Any recommendations for easing these care routines, please?
Yeah, so that's a great time for when they're resisting the hygiene aspect of being of growing up, actually. So it's, if you are creating that place in the, I would start with looking at the space as well. How much of it are they independent, and how much are they looking still looking to you for? If you have created a space that offers them everything is at their level, everything is accessible for them, including the mirror, including their toothbrush, toothpaste, etc., and encouraging them to do it. And what we have to recognize is when children are brushing their teeth, that it doesn't look like how we brush our teeth, but it is enough. It can be enough. They're still got their little baby teeth going on, and that we're just doing it. I usually recommend that you start with brushing your teeth at the same time next to them, in your space, in that environment as well. And make it fun. I have, when I've done this in classrooms and I've done this in home, where we usually sing a song during it, I would go through different, can you, while you're brushing your teeth, can you make the sound oh, and do that, so that they're getting really into their back teeth. They had no idea what they were doing, but I would like, now see how far you can reach your teeth when you say the sound ah. And it was great fun. We got through brushing teeth just by having a little fun as well. But I think the key there is the space. Are they independent? Because at 22 months, that is what your child is needing. They want to do it themselves.
Great. Well, we've got 5 minutes. Any last minute questions while we still got everyone on the call? I'm going to go ahead and also drop Sarah's website link in case you want to reach out to her, have any follow-up questions that pop into your mind later. You can find her information there. I know she shared it as well in the beginning of the presentation, but that way you can click the link if you're interested. I'll pause for a couple seconds just to see if anyone has any follow-up questions. All right, well, thank you so much to Sarah. Oh, here we go. A tip to Greg as a pediatric dental assistant: try letting them brush, then say, okay, my turn.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Ronan. Thank you for sharing that. All right, well, thank you so much to Sarah for her presentation. I think it was really helpful, and I hope that everyone took some great tips with them and some new knowledge. Thank you so much to all of our speakers and for all the parents who participated in our October parenting session. This recording will be available tomorrow morning. So if you joined us late, or if you want just this to view back later, that will be available for you tomorrow. You can reach out to your school. You can reach out to Sarah or myself and Camille if you have any follow-up questions. We'll be doing another virtual parenting series for Montessori Thrive in February. So keep a lookout if you're looking for another learning opportunity as a Montessori parent. Until then, I hope everyone takes care, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening. And thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us, even though it's so late for you.
No, you're welcome. Pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.